going to flip that on and say hello to our recording friend. All right, let's breeze through this. For everybody that doesn't know me, hi, I am Brooke Bartos. I became the de facto leader of the Dynamics Mug a few years ago. So like to have these sessions as often as we can, although it's something where finding speakers has been a challenge. So if you are ever interested in presenting or know somebody who would be a great presenter for one of our sessions, please reach out. We appreciate that. The couple quick rules just to breeze through. One rule, number one, we are very strict on creating a safe place for everyone who participates in a Marketo users group. So we do ask that you not contact members outside of the group without their permission and not share any use cases that other members may discuss during the sessions outside of our meetings without their consent. This is also why we let you know that we're recording, although if you do have questions that you do not want asked on a recording, I'm happy to provide some time after the call if you'd like to just shoot me a chat. We can make sure that we
Hi, could
do
I
that.
make an appointment for a gel manicure?
Okay. Um, Sounds like fun, a gel manicure. I like that.
I don't know how to do
Uh,
those. I know dynamics. I don't know how to do those.
Yep. So as a reminder, please mute your mics. I'll be running through the list here and muting everybody if you're not already on mute. Cool. If you have any questions about the recording, I will be sending that out as soon as the Marketo team has it processed and gives us a YouTube link. Should be later today, if not tomorrow. So if you have anything that you want to go back and take a look at, you'll be able to do so. A few things that I did want to call out, some upcoming meetings that may be local to you or virtual, meaning you can join from anywhere in the world. Next week, Tuesday, Chicago. I also lead Chicago. Come say hi. We love you. The Chicago group, we often do virtual sessions. It is all of just four degrees in Chicago. So we like to hibernate and be hermits and do things virtually, especially in the winter. So next week, we do have an Inbox to Impact strategies for email operations success virtual session. Next week, the newest mug, the Women in Tech mug, will be having a session on AI with Marketo Engage. So check out mugs.marketo.com for those. A few of our global in-person and virtual sessions coming up. Looks like most of these have passed. Sorry for the late slide. Mugs.marketo.com, you're always going to be able to see what's on there. If there are things that are of interest to you, check and see if they're virtual. Most of, actually, all of the users groups are always very welcoming of folks from around the globe to jump in. Summit's coming up. Get registered if you haven't already. A lot of great sessions on there. And then the last thing I wanted to call out, if you have been moved to the new Adobe Marketo Identity Management System, that will give you access to the new email design editor in Marketo. A lot of great features with that, but it is something where you have to be on the new system to be able to access that. So speak with your CSMs to get going. All right. Flipping into the session today, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Raja Walia of GNW Consulting. Raja's done a ton of work in Microsoft Dynamics. Really appreciate taking the time to be here. Appreciate all of you being here. I'm going to turn it over to Raja, let you kick it off and share with us your insights of working with Dynamics. Raja?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. And pleasure to meet everyone here. Kind of give you a quick background about myself. I've been a Marketo user since about 2010, 2011. I was one of the first 5 certified people inside Marketo, and when Marketo first launched the certification exam. And I've been an architect and a solutions architect and engineer since I think like the 5th or 7th person when they introduced the master exam. So I've been a Dynamics admin, I've been a Salesforce admin, I've been in Marketo, I've used various other platforms. I'm not going to say since Adobe Marketo user group mug, but been inside the consulting space pretty much my entire life. So just a quick little background about me. And I'm going to quickly share my screen because I think I'm not going to bore everyone to from a PowerPoint slide. There is going to be a live demo or a use case version of this, but can everyone see my screen? Everyone able to see?
We gotcha.
Awesome. All right. So what we work with a lot of Dynamics customers in our life is that there are delays and there are items that Dynamics does not sync over properly. It does do a lot of GUIDs, just the nature of how certain Dynamics instances are set up. One thing about Dynamics, I do like the CRM. However, we've had to do a lot of workarounds from a marketing perspective, and that's really what we're going to be talking about here. Is how do you go around the idea that when you have a GUID, which is an alphanumeric string, how do we personalize email and how we personalize content in conjunction with the dynamic sync, which doesn't allow a lot of kind of flexibility because of the rigid data model and the data architecture it has. So how do we approach numeric and data field syncs, right? They sync as string values instead of numbers. And if you did want a numeric value or an integer, if you wanted to say greater than or less than, becomes a little bit of a pain in the butt. Multi-select fields, I don't know about a lot of Dynamics customers, but the customers and clients that I've had, they do have a lot of multi-select field and variables. Now it syncs as a single string with a comma value, which is pretty common. How do we go about doing that? Or how do we work around those? Leads converted to contacts, they don't merge immediately or automatically in certain cases, depending on merge permissions that Dynamics enforces on the sync user, especially with the sync settings that are in Marketo. So sometimes merging does not happen and therefore you get a duplicate. Well, how do you kind of work around and how do you find those? Related object data, opportunity support cases, they're not directly usable in the same contents as the Salesforce sync, but what about custom entities? Like how do you get data from custom entities and use them inside emails? Account-based data could be inconsistent from contacts in the same organization. The reason being the Dynamics integration works in a account valid model. So if you have an account and you try to update the company name on a lead or a contact, then it will sync the account name automatically. There are just certain rules behind the scenes on the integration that does not allow you to change values even if you are collecting them. It causes data mismatching. So you might have to pull from the account rather than the contact itself. CRM update, overriding Marketo field updates. This is a pretty common occurrence with how permission sets kind of work. I've never, if you have, and you have an instance of Dynamics that you have full admin access, if your Azure instance and your OAuth and your authentication is giving Marketo full rights, permissions, and readability to make updates and changes. I've never experienced that in my entire life inside a dynamic CRM where a marketing automation platform has that. You probably don't have to worry about data overwriting, but data overwriting commonly occurs just because the value is not going to cross objects from Marketo to Dynamics. And then one of the number one kind of workarounds we're going to walk through is campaign membership data, or lack thereof, in a sense, from Dynamic, right? We can sync it, but how do we leverage it? So those are all kind of the common issues that I've ran into. And now to flip the script to not it be so technical, but how do we work around it from a marketing perspective? We use velocity scripting. And velocity scripting is one of the most easiest ways to personalize emails leveraging Dynamics. So lookup fields instead of GUIDs. This looks very complicated, but trust me, when I get into the live demo and we're going to leverage AI, aka ChatGPT a little bit to make your life easier. So you can generally just write this script, and I'll show you how to kind of edit it inside our Marketo instance as well. So if you have an instance of Dynamics that has a lot of GUID data, so industry GUID 123 ABC 000, whatever it is, if we want to set the value of that GUID to something instead of flattening the field, which is the most common use case, right? The most common idea is where we're going to take the field, we're going to create a flattened field, then we're going to create a workflow, and then we're going to use that workflow to stamp, technology instead of the GUID, sync that into Marketo, then use that as a token value. Well, you don't really need to do that. Certain instances I've worked with before, just the approval process, you might be at a field limitation. Are you going to set it on the lead or contact level? Where are you going to create it? Are you going to create a Marketo custom field? So this is where velocity scripting / email scripting plays really in handy, because you can set the value at the program level, at the token level, and then once that value is determined, meaning if this is your GUID, you set the industry to technology. And if this is your GUID, you set the industry to healthcare, then this is the message, which I just realized is the repeated word. This is the message that will show. And you can personalize this message across each kind of section. So this is one of the use cases that we work very commonly with the Dynamics integration specifically, instead of flattening fields, because your team has said, hey, we cannot flatten the GUID, or we do not have fields. We're not going to flatten the data. We can't create a workflow. The second most common kind of item that we run into is data field synced as string values. Well, when we look at a string and an integer field inside Marketo, the greater than, less than option in the operator goes away. So what we can essentially kind of do is we can set that field to a numeric value and then put in a statement based off on the numeric field. So we can say, set a field of revenue, turn it to a number. If the revenue is greater than 5,000, meaning you have a string field that says 5 to 10 million, 50 to 100,000, and it's not an integer field, you can actually, inside Marketo, without having to flatten the data or any of those kind of workarounds, set those values and correlate, if you wanted to, like statements like your account qualifies for this pricing, or else if your revenue is not greater, this is what shows. So there's different ways to go about just flattening the data for one purpose, for the idea of, hey, let's use it as kind of a token field. The same thing with multi-select field syncs as a single string. So if you have multi-select values, well, we can essentially carve those out directly at the program level rather than using contains filters or trying to work with dynamic content and segmentation, just because that value, segmentation takes a little bit to run. But if the messaging in a marketing perspective is that you want to discover our newest software or upgrade hardware or promote something based off on a product interest, well, you can actually carve out the multi-select pick list and create content specifically inside one script token to present it. And this sounds, mind you, a lot more complicated than it might sound complicated, but I'll give you two more examples of how we've used this. And this will be available. I mean, these are all working copies of code and stuff like that. And I'll show you how to ChatGPT-fy this so you don't have to write it yourself here in a second. But multiple field conditions. Well, what if you want to say if someone has finance and lead engagement score over 40? In the use case of a standard Marketo operation, we would use this as a smart list. We would say if industry is finance, engagement score is 50, give me all of the list, and we would use that list to market, to essentially market to someone. Well, you could do that. However, sometimes with the dynamic sync and the data mismatch, and this might be kind of true with other syncs as well, is that the data set doesn't really relate, or the smart list seems off because there's a mismatch in data that is not pulling the correct amount of leads. Well, from here, what happens is it's querying the database. A smart list is a version of a dynamic query. And when it queries the database, it looks for data that has been updated, recently updated, or set is. However, in the activity log, it might actually show that person's score is greater than 50. It could be a change data value. If you say score was changed over 50, and then the field that the number correlates to is not a score field, then your smart list will fail because you're looking for score or engagement data. So in this ways, you can actually create multiple field conditions and highlight what you want them to show or what content you want them to show or discover based off on it. And then kind of the last one, map campaign data to a custom field. This is the most common use case that I've worked with Dynamics, is because Dynamics doesn't sync campaign data. You can't store it. In this case, you need to create a field called last campaign joined, sync into Marketo, and then we can use Velocity script to say, if that last campaign joined field is a checkbox, you can actually say, you can set the campaign and create dynamic follow-ups inside one email for every single last campaign, webinar, ABM strategy workshop, whatever it is. These are just examples for every single person that has that field marked. So it will show the relevant data inside one field. Now, once again, sounds very complicated. Some of you might already have experience in this or might not have experience in this. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to show you real quickly that it is all right. Can everyone see my screen? Should be a Marketo instance.
We
Cool.
got it.
Perfect. So inside the Marketo program and under my tokens, I've created 3 Velocity Script tokens. And these Velocity Script tokens, option 1, MA platform _C is a custom field that I use to kind of collect marketing automation platforms at GNW, since we're a tech agnostic agency. However, I said if it contains Marketo, I want to send the link to Adobe Marketo Engage. If else, I want to send the link to GNW Consulting. In the standard object and custom objects, if you do have custom objects, you can reference these. I go in and select the value. The cool thing about this is that you don't need to rely on a person field. You can use program membership, like we have, shirt sizes, hoodie sizes, and stuff like that. Anything on the opportunity object, we don't have any custom objects, but if you did, like custom entities, you can select that data to show in here. So, but that's the main thing. The only thing you realistically have to do is select the field that you would want. And I have CRM platform and MA platform selected, and then write the code. Once I've written this code, I'm going to go to the email real quick. I'm going to go to preview draft. I'm going to show you 2 versions of this. So one, under my tokens, I have a checkbox and a qualified box. The qualified box literally says if lead score is above a certain amount, hey, let's chat. If else, please click my emails. So I'm going to go into this code testing email, and this is what it looks like. This is the default, because if else is the code that it by default would be using. So if I go back to person, I'm just going to type in Raja at gnwconsulting.com. Now what you're going to see is a check mark instead of an X. Now this is dynamic, like this is the power of velocity scripting. And option 2 now says, hey, let's chat. And this link goes to Marketo Engage. I'm actually going to plug in my wife's email because I know she doesn't meet the criteria. And now it has an X, and it says, please click on my emails. And now it says GNW Consulting. So when we're talking about the idea about velocity scripting and what it's used for, what we're really saying is we know that the common practice is to flatten data sets and flatten the data set to a field that is Marketo friendly. What I'm saying is you don't need to do that. You don't need to flatten the data, because we can, by using this email script and coming in here and choosing the field that you want to be based off on, whether it's a GUID, whether it's a multi-select pick list, whether it's whatever it is, even if it's a custom object, right? You can essentially edit the script token to show the value dynamically across the entire database without having to create a segmentation, choose a smart list, and run the segmentation. And the other part, give me 1 second, to make this a little bit easier, I'm actually just going to share screen 1 because I feel like it's a little bit easier to just flip back and forth. One of the other parts of this is use the cheat codes, like use the ChatGPT prompts that are available, because velocity scripting back like maybe 10 years ago when Marketo first kind of launched, or even longer than that, I think like over 15 or 13 now, I'm aging myself a little bit. It was a little bit difficult because you have to write these codes by itself. Well, you don't have to, because the prompt that I use is write an email script that can be used in Marketo to show dynamic personalization based off on the field. Not only does it give you the code, and if you look at how this works, where it says set industry equals business, and if industry is technology, stay ahead in your tech world at AI powered automation, blah, blah, blah. This is what just ChatGPT spit out, and it generated automatically, right? However, you can actually customize this, because now you can say, And this is the exact prompt. You can see it right here, right? I don't use commas or proper English when I talk to ChatGPT. It says, write an email script that can be used in Marketo. Here is the API name. Here's the field map. This is what it's on the lead object, and this is what's on the contact object. And you can use this from a dynamics perspective as well. So I'm giving it the field that I need it to create and write a script on. And what it's essentially doing is it added in the marketing version, like if HubSpot, show HubSpot here. Sorry, Brooke, I know it's a Marketo user group, but this is what ChatGPT decided to enter in. And it actually spits out the entire code. So it spits out the entire thing that you're wanting to do. So if you can give it a list of GUIDs, for example, which is a common occurrence inside Dynamics, you have an Excel document with all the GUIDs, and you say, hey, these are all the GUIDs, and this is what it should map to. Well, write a script for it, and it will literally generate a script for you to transfer that GUID ID into a value rather than going through the process of flattening a field and then writing a workflow to it. You can just do it inside of a Marketo program. So, a couple things with this is like, even when I bring up ChatGPT here, this is a live demonstration because I'm all about practicality. Everyone should see ChatGPT, right? I think I brought it onto my screen. Is that right? Everyone sees ChatGPT? Cool. So write a Marketo velocity script for this industry field. Here is the entire script from start to finish that it's going to give you. So you can use this to work around a couple of the nuanceable natures of the dynamic sync where data isn't available, data is mismatched, you don't have access to data, you can't get a flattened field, or you can't get a field with usable data. Segmentation is not really going to work for dynamic content because then you have to go in and create each of the items inside the email and then share the content and all that good stuff. No, you can literally bypass all of that, take the script, and if you look at it here, this is how it's copy and pasted in. I have a dev background, so I always use option one, but you can literally go to ChatGPT, take this entire thing, refine it, and even have ChatGPT refine it for you when working in Dynamics, put it in here and create this email script program that allows you to just not be so much reliant on the sync and do workarounds on the sync, but change the content and personalization of your emails based off on the data that you kind of have to work with. So one main thing, there is an Adobe helpful link on this. Please go in and one of the biggest, I think, pitfalls of email scripting and learning email scripting is people don't just check the box. If you check the box here, that's when the script will work. You can have the best script, but if you don't check the box inside the field that you want to pull the data from, it generally won't really work. It won't work at all. So that's just a couple things in there. So I'm going to open it up a little bit here. Why velocity scripting and marketing strategy, right? The idea has always been conveyed that we need to work around sync and integration. And there are tools that we have that's part of the native sync that we can use and not use and not follow, I guess, from a path perspective of doing flattening of data, but you can use scripting to alleviate kind of a good 70 to 80%, which is a random number, mind you, of a lot of the nuances that you run in with syncs in general, whether it's the customer integration, definitely with the Dynamics integration for sure. You can work around messy data. You can reduce manual segmentation. You can, keep messaging on point, on brand in relationship to what your outbound strategy is. Whether it's a GTM strategy for a product and you're waiting for a field, you don't need to wait for a field because you can literally write a script inside Marketo to set the field to what you want so it demonstrates and shows appropriately. Right. Sorry, I know it's a little bit technical, but hopefully it cleared it up in the end. Brooke, that's kind of all I got for this one. I know that's like a million things that we covered, but anyone has questions on it at all, period.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. And as I said, this is recorded. So if you couldn't keep up with taking notes as we
Are
went,
you on mute?
all that'll be going through. What's that, Raja? What was your question, Raja?
Is it just me?
Oh, it must be yours. Can you hear me now?
There we go. That's
Okay.
better, I think.
We've got a couple in the chat box for you. With the transition to handlebar scripting, what do we need to consider for all of these scenarios from Courtney?
Yeah, so handlebar scripting is something that I'm still getting kind of updated on via like the partner program. So I'm figuring out how these are going to translate. There's a couple things that will remain the same of the if, set, and else, but I will have a better follow-up to it when it gets activated inside of our Marketo instance. We are on IMS, so we have transitioned over. However, there is a waiting period for all of those items. I'm still, like I said, I'm still diving into like what is the best use cases for these as well.
Awesome.
For Dan, there is a use case when we need a friendly value of the GUID for other things than dynamic content. In those cases, we use Munchkin expression. Marketo no longer officially supports Munchkin, but the functionality still exists. Lookup lead owner. Yeah, I mean, you can't. So the thing with what you're describing is regarding that expression statement from a lookup field. Is it tied to a custom object? Because you could use scripting, and I believe in handlebar scripting, and once again, I'm not sure on this one because I still have to dive into it. There is a way instead of doing a lookup, you can set the value that you want the value to be, and then mark it, and then essentially create a custom Marketo field to stamp that value and look at that value in relationship to the data set that's available. Right?
So
Like
how
if
would
you're
how
saying,
would so how would you do that? So the example I'm using is the own by field
okay,
in Dynamics, which
yeah,
tells us which region owns this lead. So for example, if what we do is we use this for a lead assignment. So if the own by field is this, then send this lead alert to this marketer in this country, for example.
right.
So that's an example of where we transform the GUID to a friendly owned by value.
Oh, if have you already, well, the version of that would be this right here, is where you take the GUID and you set the value. So if the GUID is this is the value that you're setting it to. And once again, this is for marketing email. I'm assuming that you're
Right.
talking about a trigger campaign that's
Exactly.
routing the lead, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is for personalizations in email, not so much from a workflow or smart trigger perspective, is where you can take that and you can use the owned by field
Yep.
to write a personalized email. It wouldn't help with routing at all because that's not what the that's not what
Exactly.
email scripting would do. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I know that the focus of this session was around personalization in emails. But I'm glad you started on this whole GUID thing because I know years ago when we used to talk to Marketo and they were like, okay, eventually we're going to support friendly name GUIDs within Marketo like we do in Salesforce, and it never happened. So we're always
Like
looking at these
12
workarounds.
years
So
ago.
yeah,
Like 12 years ago.
it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing with the whole GUID inside email. Like I said, I transitioned, and I say we from a GNW consulting perspective. A lot of our
Mhm.
Dynamics customers, we just use a lot of velocity scripting instead of
Yeah.
working with the IT team to flatten the data because you can translate the GUID to whatever you would want. The handlebar scripting, like I said, it's kind of like the new email editor. We're about to get access to it in like a week. We're doing like a session on it on the email editor as well. But as soon as they activate it, I'll probably reach out to Brooke and do another session from a mug perspective on just like handlebar scripting.
Right. Yeah, and then the only downfall with this is, let's say the CRM team they add 5 new industries to
Of course.
CRM, then you got to just update this. That's not a big
Yeah.
deal because couldn't you,
You can't
because
tokenize.
could this be this has to be at the program level, right?
Yep.
It can't be a global token. So
I wouldn't recommend a global token just in general anyway. And the thing with this one as well is like you can't use tokens inside this token, which I've,
Yeah.
7 years ago, I decided I'm like, this is the best idea I've ever had. Put a token inside a token and it failed for like, every single email send until I realized it. So I wouldn't recommend it anyway. The
Yeah.
one thing from what Courtney was talking about regarding scripting as it moves over to Adobe, as everyone transitions to Adobe, there is a functionality of creating unified token values that can be reused, that can be used as tokens inside scripts. That's what I'm kind of looking forward to because then that would accommodate for a
Hmm.
section where you can just set the GUIDs, and those
Yeah.
GUIDs will automatically run, and then you set the values to it. Once again, all relatively new, so I'll probably have more on it as we get access to it as
Right. And then, by the way, thanks. I didn't even think about using Chat GPT for
well.
creating velocity scripts. I always have to like reach out to Sandy and like, hey, Sandy, I got this issue with this very complex script. Can you help me out?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm telling you, like the ChatGPT, and the reason I'm doing this session now is because I remember writing these things and testing it on like Notepad Plus sometimes, and now it's just like this is so easy. Like you
Wow.
literally just give it the field, and it literally will spit out exactly what you need. You just need to check the box inside Marketo.
Yeah, that's the one thing a lot of people forget is they don't check the box next to the actual field in Marketo. So that's a key point.
Not Super Saiyan, just Ultra. Well, actually, I have Ultra Instinct Thaddeus, so I'll say UI. How about Super? Not Super Saiyan. I'll say UI.
I'm going to throw another plug in here for ShyMug. If you go to the Chicago Marketo users group on the mugs.marketo.com page, our last session, 2 sessions ago, we did a session specifically on ChatGPT, AI, and Marketo. And our speaker actually created a GPT agent specifically for writing velocity script. I'm going to try and grab the link for that really quickly to throw in here. But he created it and opened up access for everybody to use. It's one of the team members over at Revenue Pulse who leads their AI group there.
Yeah, the program GPT, you have to feed it a lot of stuff. Like you have to, so we have a lot of custom GPTs that we use for our clients. Like we have a Marketo Measure GPT, and the Marketo Measure GPT has literally every single thing that you need to know about measure and how attribution works. And however, with those ones, they constantly need to be updated. So that GPT, when you're feeding it data, like I think I created like one connector to a custom GPT that throws in like all of our Gong calls from a consulting perspective, and we have a GNW GPT that literally our consultants go, what's the best practice for lead scoring? And it will spit it out based off on every single conversation for like the good part of 2024. So with those GPTs, they constantly need to have data generally fed into it as well, which makes it super cool from a velocity script perspective. However, the you would want to create a GPT and throw in whatever custom field data set that you have inside field management so it understands the field that you're looking for. So that's why in the example that I had, we had I said, hey, use this field, which is the custom field. This is the API name. This is the friendly label, because I wanted to use the field as it sits in our instance. So that way, when it spits out the code, it's more related 100% to your instance and how you're going to use it, rather than kind of a generic velocity script where it says set $industry. You don't use industry in Marketo, you use industry __ C, or the friendly label could be something else based off on different environments. Are there any downsides to using velocity scripting instead of using segmentation? No, I actually like velocity scripting a lot more, because segmentation and dynamic content in Marketo is a point in time. It's a refresh that happens every 12 hours. So if a field value updates, it takes 12 hours for the segmentation to update. Also, you don't need to go in and set depending on how everyone works. I'm not a big fan of setting modules as segments and dynamic content and editing each content. I'd rather just use velocity script tokens to essentially reference it. And to me, it's a lot easier. And there's less limitations, whereas dynamic content and segmentation is based off on a field. Like you can't use a smart list. You have to use a list, or you have to use field data, or you have to create a GUID custom field. In here, it's a little bit more dynamic because your GUID field is going to change when you add something to Dan's point, and then all you have to do is just change the GUID in one setting, rather than editing the segmentation, changing the GUID, reapproving the segmentation, and depending on your database side, waiting up to 12 hours for it to actually finalize. If you've ever sent a dynamic content or segmentation email out before, and someone's like, oh, I received the wrong content, blah, 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 it's mainly probably because the data wasn't updated enough, or the segmentation itself didn't spin all the way around on the back end in order to move the people into the appropriate segment. Where velocity script is literally reading a if then value and saying, if this, do that, and then it goes out the door. Cool. All right, guys. I would love to stay here and chat more, but I did have a hard stop at 1:30. So if anyone's any questions, I will send this document over, Brooke. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, please feel free to message me on LinkedIn and stuff. I've been doing this for a while, so more than likely, if you want to chat about any dynamic stuff or something like workarounds, it's probably my bread and butter.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Raja. Everyone
Thanks,
else who
everyone.
joined, thank you all so much. Hugely appreciate it. As I said, I'll have the recording out shortly. If you have topics you'd love to see presented, if you are interested in speaking, please let me know. But we really appreciate it. If anyone is attending Adobe Summit, have a wonderful time. Take care. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, everybody.